Now, Cole, coming back to an observation that you made about that long period of undercover with the mafia. You said we had become spies more than undercover cops, the most difficult of all the grey professions to sustain. You want to elaborate on that?
It is the hardest, I think, of all the grey professions, and there's a few grey professions out there, and it's harder to be a spy, I think, than, and this is not to take away from the different tasks themselves, but I think it's harder to sustain a lie and to add to the lie as an infiltrator, a spy. You're there for the long haul. Infiltration and undercover work is similar, but they're very different. I think it's represented by both sides of it here today. With Mick is a classic undercover man who you can brief up, and I don't want to be bold by saying all this, but I've got to know Mick, and I've read his book too. And you brief Mick up, and he can go into some really difficult situations as undercover operative and come out with what you need. Infiltration, by the very nature of that type of work, requires sometimes years. And it's a different type of style of undercover or covert work. And you've got to be able to befriend that person to the point where you go to dinner with them one night and nothing illegal spoken about. You'll spend a whole week with them, nothing illegal spoken about. It's the befriending. It's layering and layering and layering your friendship to a point where one day they wake up and they realise, shit, that guy's my second best friend. How did that happen? But then look at their watch and they work, or their calendar, and they work out that we've been together 2 years or 18 months or a year. It's crawling in with them and sustaining that mateship and that trust, whereas an undercover operative might leapfrog to that same result by being vouched for or introduced in a shorter period of time. So it is difficult, and you've got to wind yourself up, you've got to brief yourself up to make sure that you know you're going to go out or go to Griffith for 3 or 4 days, and there's no drugs, there's no guns, there's no money. It's just having dinner with them, and that can be very, very boring sometimes because they're criminals. So to get through that,
criminals are innately boring, right?
Well, they're not my choice of dinner companion. My daughter is, my friends are. And here I am spending 5 days on this particular block of work, having barbecues or making pasta or going to a sausage salami making day with Italians I don't care for, because I know the guy in the back there, we know in the intelligence report he's killed somebody, or the other one over in the on the sausage machine is behind a big plantation of marijuana. They're not your choice of friends. So it's very difficult to sustain that friendship for 3, 4, 5 days and go back to Melbourne to be a dodgy art dealer to come back the next week and do it again.
Now I'll come to the cost, the personal cost for you too in all of this. And you write that in your last year, what was to be your last year in the police force, although I don't know that you realised that at the time, there was a point where you just basically crashed. You had 3 black days that to this day you don't remember, but you were found essentially curled in the fetal position on a couch in your living room. Now, was that depression, some of it must have been due to the kind of life you had as a policeman?
95% of it, Kerry. It was the end or the eclipse of a long career, 2 decades almost. And I had come out of 5 years, I think, covert. 2 or 3 of that with the mafia in Griffith, and then I followed that up back to back with an undercover covert infiltration of the NCA bomber in Adelaide, which was probably not the smartest thing I did, although we locked him up. But I just kept stretching this environment I was playing in and losing relationships and girlfriends, and one day I just found myself in the Melbourne clinic, and my controller, we have controllers, Mick will tell you about controllers and people you need to talk to, and they'll send you get briefed up and go out and do it and come back to them. My controller somehow found me in my apartment in East Melbourne, and I finished up waking up 3 days later in the Melbourne clinic. And I looked around, there was a mix of entertainers and businessmen and burnt out cops, and I thought, this is not a task force I want to be on. I want to get out of this as quick as I can.
Any journalists?
No comment.
We have self-therapy. Mick, how do you measure the cost to you and your family, I would think? I mean,
The cost to your family is very hard. My wife said to me that 6 months ago, I gave her a copy of the book before it went out, and she read it.
that was a good idea.
And she read it, and her words were, I didn't know how much shit you put up with. I was too busy with the 3 kids. So any night I came home and talked to her, obviously she didn't listen to what I said. I thought I was supposed to be doing that, but no, she practiced at doing that. So, look, the family, it's hard because you're not home at night. The kids are going swimming. You're out there with some scum that you don't really want to be with, and as Cole just said, you got to sort of entertain him. You don't speak the same language technically, but you've got to try and speak his language, and half of it you don't really want to be there. And as I said, your kids miss out on you going to the swimming classes or seeing them to swim and the athletics and all that. So your family does suffer, but it's something that goes in your blood, and as Cole probably would agree with me, it gets into you, and when you get into it, you sort of just want to keep going into it until you realise, I'm just about burnt. And then you feel like Cole did, and sometimes you do it yourself, you pull out of it yourself, sometimes you can't.
So living that life, and with the level of commitment that it required, and having gone through what you had gone through with your colleagues, how did you feel when the day came to walk away?
Well, the fortunate part is the day I walked away, I still miss it. And you do miss it. I don't know whether you agree with me there, Cole. It's there, it's part of you, Cole, you might, but you do miss it. You miss that part of the job that was there. And look, I've been out 8 years, and I'm just starting to get out of it now. I don't talk to too many police, because if you do, you start talking police work again. And you avoid that if you can, and Cole will just nod at his head, that's the case. So I try and keep away from the police as much as I can. I've got nothing against them, like I've worked with them for years. But what I'm saying is, if you talk to them, the next thing you talk about some job that you did with them, and you're back in the mole, and then it takes you another 6 months to get over it. So I try and avoid mixing with them as much as I can. Although I've just had a few calls since I've done this book.
I bet you have.
A fellow rang me up the other day and said, I want you to sign my book. He said, we shared the same room together. And I said, what room was that? He said, I don't remember the room number, we definitely shared the same room in the barracks together, So I met him this week actually. I just met him and signed his book, and I do remember him. And I said, I really don't remember what room we were in, because we were in barracks those days, Today they live in academies, don't they?
Now, we're going to allow the next 15 minutes for questions, and there's a microphone just at the back of this first tent. So if you want to make your way to the microphone, and just queue, and we'll take you in order. But while we're waiting for the first...
We're going home.
I didn't say we were finished. This is people are making an assumption that the questions aren't going to be high quality. Let's have a go.